A lot of time in Texas, we're all going to experience some seasonal settlement is what we call it. And so there should be some cosmetics that if we go and really nitpick the inside and the outside of your home, I should be able to find some small cracks just about in anyone's home. We're hoping that that's just seasonal settlement and that could be just a handyman type of touch-up repair. When you start seeing stair-step cracks that form funky shapes, then that's where we want to be a little bit more concerned, and we'd probably recommend that you get with an engineer or a foundation repair contractor.
And I'll show it to Jake, and Jake's like, okay, well, what are their pain points? What's going on in the house? We need to figure out what's really going on.
Anytime you're thinking about a foundation repair or discussing one, you need to be thinking about your plumbing as well.
Yeah, and often the plumbing can be the cause of the repair that's needed. If you had a 1950s house and old sewer pipes are leaking, that could be causing your house to sink in the middle.
Exactly.
You got all that moisture right in the middle of the house.
That's exactly right.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Your Project Shepherd podcast. I am your host, Curtis Lawson, and joining me today, I've got my friends Sonora Storm. Sonora is back for her second visit, right?
Amen.
And I told her she's back for one more time. She gets her name on the back of the chair. So first timer, we've got her boss, Jake Gottfried, and they are with Lincoln Jacob Construction. The last time you saw Sonora was on our GHBA episode. Obviously Sonora was super involved in GHBA, and we had a great episode about GHBA membership and all that means to us. But today, we're here for real business. We're here to talk about foundations, foundation maintenance, foundation repair, all that kind of stuff. It's something that we deal with a lot here in Houston. So let's just get started and tell me about your business, how you got started in this, and a little history, and what you guys do exactly.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for having us. We're really thankful to be here. So Lincoln Jacob Construction, we started about 8 years ago. And basically we specialize in foundation repair and sewer repair. We also do waterproofing and drainage, basically anything that has to do with moving dirt out the way. That's what we do. Primarily it is foundation inspections, investigations, and repair. So that's what we specialize in. One of the things that we're most proud of is we don't use subcontractors, so we don't sub out our jobs. Everything's in-house, from the inspection on the property all the way to the folks that are digging the holes in the trenches. Everyone's on our team, and so no strangers going around our projects. And we've just got a great team. We've been blessed over the years to attract very talented people that know how to treat people, and we keep them. And so that's what's really one of the main reasons that we've been blessed to be successful.
Yeah, and you've got a great person sitting right here.
Exactly.
We love Sonora. She's an amazing person, and she does so much for GHBA. I know she does so much for you. I just can't say enough good things about her.
Yeah, no, she's amazing. She's a game changer. We couldn't be more thankful to have her. In a world where it's so fun to find people that are committed day in and day out and are consistent, lots of folks can show little glimpses of hope or glimpses of going above and beyond for their clients and for their company. And this woman here is consistently always on top of things and always cares about her clients and her team. And so there's nobody better in the business than Sonora Storm.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Jake. And you remember how Lincoln Jacob Construction and I met through the GHBA.
That's right.
That I was working on being Spike of the Year, my first time to be Spike of the Year, and Lincoln Jacob was one of my spikes, and they joined. And God had a plan, and it was an amazing plan, like all of his. And he connected Jake and I at perfect timing for myself and for his company, and that's how I got started with Lincoln Jacob Construction.
Man, great chance meeting there.
Yes, and going almost next month it'll be 3 years.
All right,
been with Jake and the team.
So the other thing that I want to mention is that you guys also founded a charity, which I think is awesome, and I know you're both involved in that on some level.
Yeah.
Correct.
Tell me about the charity and what you guys do there.
Yeah, so we founded a charity called the Katy Angels. What I realized a while back, especially in construction, and if you do your job right and you treat people right, there should be some extra money laying around. And it all goes back to the way you treat people. And we've been blessed that so many people trust us with their projects. My family and I've been personally blessed. My wife is a successful career woman as well. She has her own business. And so we decided that we need to give back in a more formal way. We always gave back and helped others in need. It's just part of who we are. But we decided to formalize it a couple years back, and we made the Katy Angels. What the Katy Angels do is we focus on simple needs. There's a lot of ideas and a lot of stuff that your heart can want to do, but we decided to keep it simple to start the Katy Angels. And so we focus on groceries and household essentials for people in need. Most of our requests come through schools and churches and larger organizations. We deal with crisis counselors at the various school districts around the Katy and the Houston area. When families are going through a real tough time, they'll reach out to us. And what we do is we try to offset some of the costs that they may have from other bills by providing groceries that could last for a while. And so that's what we specialize in, is reaching out to folks that are in a sad, depressed, or just going through a tough time financially, and we try to cheer them up with something as simple as groceries.
I think, Sonora, you told me before that, I think sometimes with charity situations, people are like really worried about, oh, is this person taking advantage of me? But you guys don't dig real far into that, right? If somebody says they have a need, let's take care of them, right? Like, it's not, we don't need to try to figure out if they're trying to game the system. Let's just help meet that need that someone says they have.
You nailed it. You nailed it. And that was a little hard for me in the very beginning because, the hangar out in Brookshire, we had Alan Griffin connected Jake with the hangar, and Jake is very familiar with Brookshire as well, so it was just a blessing. But our very first Christmas with the Katy Angels, Jake and Ariel, we went out, we purchased a lot of toys, took them to Brookshire, told the community, and you just came in, you got a bag, and you shopped. There was no limits. There was no sign your name here. How many children do you have? And it was just amazing to let God do His will without any red tape. Is how
Yeah. No, I think that's great, and I'm glad that you brought that up. That is something that we're very proud of, and I think that goes back to when we formed the company, and we wish that we could help everybody that was behind on rent. We wish we could help everybody that's cars broke down, everyone that's a little behind on paying for their kids' private school or college, or, there's so many various things that financial burdens throw at you, and I wish I could fix it all, right? And that's one of the main reasons I decided to pick groceries, because if you start paying bills for people, you really can be taken advantage of easy. And at the end of the day, you're paying some wealthy guy's rent that owns some building that he should have worked it out with someone, right? And so the money doesn't even really go directly to the folks in need when you're paying bills per se, even though I know what it feels like to need some help paying bills, that's for sure. So I decided that, what we're going to do is we're going to do milk, bread, eggs, lunch meat, cereal. And so if you're going to take advantage of us, you just took advantage by eating some bread, And so if you're going to take advantage, or that's the extent of it, is you got to eat a free meal. Well,
or they took a few extra toys, right, Jake?
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, we're hoping that the toys, the bread, the milk makes its way to kids, and that's what we care most about. But I think if you overthink why people are in need or why you should help people, you won't help anyone, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
So
that's awesome.
A great day at Lincoln Jacob. Well, every day is a great day at Lincoln Jacob, but I'll be in my office and I'll be working on estimates or calling or whatever, sales, marketing. And I'll hear Jake in his office and I'm like, oh, he's talking to someone in need, because I'll hear him. They're going, now, do you have any allergies? How many children? Well, if you could have one really fun thing, what would you like? What would you like to see? And it's just so cool that I'm in here working. And I know that the funds that we bring in, they're going out his door to help other people. And it just makes for an awesome place to be every day.
That's great. All right, let's talk about foundations.
Let's do it.
So mostly we're going to talk about slab on grade foundations because that's primarily what we have here in Houston. Just a concrete sitting on the ground is what we do here, for the most part. But most of this advice, most of our discussion could apply to other foundation types. But the basic principle is that soil moves, soil gets wet and expands, dries out and contracts. And so that affects really any type of foundation, even basements, which we don't have here, right? So keeping the moisture level around a house consistent to prevent movement is key. But we have a lot of variation in soil types here in Houston. We have some areas that are really high expansive clay soils where you see just a ton of movement. So I just wanted to talk about what goes into kind of causing that. Well, obviously water causes it, but what conditions will kind of make it favorable for that soil to expand and contract. So what do you typically see when you go out to look at houses? And you're like, oh, you walk up and you're like, oh, I see right now why you have movement. Mm-hmm. What kind of issues do you commonly see?
Yeah, so number one is going to be gutters. Believe it or not, the number one cause to foundation issues is a lack of gutters. A lot of folks don't want you to know that because it's so simple to fix, and you can get ahead of it and start reducing the foundation market. And Houston is the leading market, Texas, and all of the world. I mean, it really is. It's different. Even in the rest of the U.S., they don't know anything about these cheap concrete press pilings that are so common down in Texas. And now there's steel products, there's hybrid products, right? We're the only ones that figured out how to take a paper towel roll, turn it into concrete, and shove it under our houses. No one's ever even heard of that, right? And so Texas is the leading market for sure in America on foundation repair, inspections, and anything related to foundations. And so some of the bigger players maybe don't want you to know that gutters could save, millions of dollars for large real estate owners, folks that own 30,000 rental properties like some of our clients do that are on our client list, actually own over 30,000 units in America. So the impact of someone that owns that many homes having gutters could save a lot of money. But down to a family level, for those of us that live around Texas and the Houston area, the first thing you need to check is gutters. You have to divert the water away from your home. As you said, Texas soils are going to be vulnerable no matter what. So you've got to maintain the moisture level. But to be honest, those slabs on grade are designed to have some flexibility, especially with the post-tension cable system. They're designed to be able to move with soil movement. Where we find the most common foundation repairs are in areas that have very poor drainage, missing gutters, or gutters that haven't been cleaned out for a couple years. Broken downspouts, as simple as your lawn care, either your husband, yourself, or your lawn guys clipping your downspout with the weed eater. Mm-hmm. And so it starts to close it. If you take a look at your downspouts around any of your homes, you should see where a weed eater's hit it.
Or it knocks the elbow off.
Or knocks it off completely. So now I have a shotgun shooting water. So when I walk up to a building, I can usually tell when there is significant erosion. I can see it. There's going to be void spots around the perimeter of your foundation. And that's usually where a sprinkler's malfunction. There's a plumbing leak of some sorts that doesn't always have to be a serious sewer leak. There can be an irrigation plumbing leak, right? Mm-hmm. Or the most common is going to be something wrong with the gutters. Literally, if they're just filled with debris and leaves, it doesn't allow the water to catch into that channel, run over to the downspout, and get dispersed the right way. It's basically all trickling over the gutters. So the most common cause of foundation problems, believe it or not, we can always blame it on the soil, but it's going to be poor drainage is going to be the number one cause of foundation issues. And then what happens when that poor drainage starts to attack your home's foundation or your lot, most folks leave it unattended for years. So then what happens is number 2 is erosion. So then significant erosion starts to occur and basically have a beach effect. Once I take soil away from the perimeter of my home, I'm allowing on just a regular rain event a little bit of water to get in under the home and then it washes out, comes in and comes out. And so then you'll even see what looks like sand around your house when there's not supposed to be sand and you're not on the beach. And that's basically going to be the beach effect, I call it, from water going in and out of your foundation. So just about every time we find a void spot or an area with significant erosion, the readings after we pull out our zip level and do an in-depth investigation, usually we see either readings that are a little bit too high there where it may have heaved, or we may see settlement in that area.
Yeah. So the soil around your house needs to be sloped away from the house. You have to have, what we call positive drainage.
Absolutely.
So the soil should be highest, where it meets the slab, and then slope away. And like you said, if your gutters are missing and that water is just sheeting straight down, it's going to kind of dig a little trench.
Exactly.
They're all on the side of your house, and it's just going to hold water. It's going to pond, right?
Yep, exactly.
And so anywhere you get water ponding against the foundation, it's going to find its way down under the foundation. It's going to sit there, and it's going to soak into the soil right there in that one spot, and that soil is going to move, right?
Exactly right.
So, but being consistent on the moisture level is also important, right? So you don't want it to get like really wet, then really dry, and have these periods of, like in a drought condition to a monsoon condition. You want it to stay pretty consistent year round, right?
Exactly right. So the way that you can accomplish that is going to be with irrigation systems. You can do drip lines. I'm not a big fan of drip lines being put in soaker hoses. Yeah. Not a big fan of that in older properties. I think that's something you're better off when that's new construction or a fairly new property, because it needs to be managed properly, and you need to take a lot of things into consideration instead of just throwing them out there and hoping that they do the job. But you're exactly right. It's those extreme differences that you want to try to mitigate. And it's as simple as watering. Even if you don't have a fancy sprinkler system, you get out there with the water hose during a drought. You shouldn't see cracks in your soil. Yeah. And you want to try to get ahead of that.
Yeah, you shouldn't see the soil kind of pulling away from the house where you got a gap between where your dirt starts and the house. It needs to kind of stay up against the house and stay a consistent moisture. And things like trees can have a big effect on moisture levels too. I mean, obviously the root structure can have a big impact on foundation, but just the moisture that trees can draw out of the soil too as they grow, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
I think I read a tree, an average tree can consume over 100 gallons of water a day.
That's correct.
Which is, in a drought condition, that might be all the water that's in that area. And so that tree is going to contribute to drying out the soil. But then I think what people don't realize is if they take a tree out, if they remove that tree from near their house, that tree's been drinking 100, 200 gallons of water a day. All of a sudden you take that tree out. Yeah. Now the soil all of a sudden gets super saturated because you're changing that dynamic. So sometimes taking a tree out can cause as many problems as leaving it in.
You're exactly right. Yeah, you need to get ahead of the trees early in the game. At design, if you have an option, if you're there when you're designing your landscaping, they need to be pushed further away. There's so many structures that we can drive around the Houston area and see where trees were planted, and just cannot believe that it's 1 foot away from a brick wall, or it's 1 foot away from someone's home or someone's pool. Or so it looked cute on an architectural drawing 20 years ago, but someone forgot to look up how big pecan trees get and did not do the research. So it was cute in a picture when the pecan tree was 4 foot tall. Somebody thought it was going to be a bush, but it was a tree. Yeah. So it wasn't a bush. It looked like a bush on the rendering, though. They just needed some greenery. So we do see that. But you're exactly right. After the fact, so if I get to design my home from scratch, I want to have my trees as far enough away from the property and not pose a risk. Most of us don't have that option, right? Not everyone's building a custom home and designing it. So you're exactly right, though. You don't go straight to removing a tree. There's a little bit more research that needs to be involved. I'd recommend an engineer, a geotechnical engineer, maybe a foundation repair company. They're not always the best to get their free quotes, to be honest with you. Sometimes you need an engineer. But there are some options as far as root barriers go. that can limit the effect of some of the roots in the system but not kill the tree. So that was a great point, though. You do not want to just go straight to destroying a tree or removing it. There's more thought to that.
If you found value in this episode of Your Project Shepherd podcast, please consider leaving us a review and sharing it with your friends. That helps us expand our reach and bring this content to more people. Thanks for being here. We took a pecan tree out of my backyard last year, and we cut it down. At first, we just cut it down about 2 feet off the ground, left the stump because we were going to try to get the root ball.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. For probably a week after we cut that thing down, water kept bubbling up from the stump because that thing was sucking so much water, and the root system was still in place.
Yeah. And
so we kept seeing like water coming up, not a fountain, but like it was water trickling out of that stump for like a week after we cut it down.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
That's unbelievable.
I've never heard of that one.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Root, you mentioned the root barriers. The roots can also kind of be searching for a water source. I mean, that's what they do. So if you do have an under-slab plumbing leak, you got a sewer leak under your house, and those roots discover that, all of a sudden those roots are in your pipes under your house, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. So those roots are definitely going to find the smallest separation. Maybe it's the tiniest leak in your system that really would not create backups or any issues that you would ever know. But that little bitty drop just attracted that root system. That you're exactly right. I've seen root systems go straight through PVC and run all throughout underneath a home.
Yeah.
So,
and for sure, if you have old concrete or clay pipes, those things are going to be just destroyed by tree roots.
Yep, absolutely.
Most of or all of the neighborhoods around here that were built in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s had clay or concrete sewer pipes originally. Mine did, and it's always crazy when we dig those things up when we're doing a remodel job and we remove those old pipes and you got a chunk of it and you look at it. The thing started off as a 4-inch pipe, and there might be a tiny little hole left in the middle of that thing that water's flowing through, and then you have all these roots in there like a tendril, and you just wonder how anything ever actually drained.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It looks like a core sample from the middle of the earth once you pull those pipes out.
And you guys do sewer pipe replacement, you said,
absolutely.
Under-slab, because that kind of goes hand in hand, right? I mean, a lot of times it just makes sense. If you're putting 20 piers under a house and you're having to do a lot of digging anyway, it's kind of the right time to go ahead and replace the sewer pipes because the workers are already down there. It's the cheapest time to get it done.
Yeah, exactly. So we're really proud that we're also a master plumber. A lot of foundation contractors like to point the fingers, and they have plumbing separate, so they advise you to get a plumber involved. And then if anything goes wrong years later, the first thing they want to do is blame it on the plumber, or the plumber wants to blame it on the foundation guy. So I do recommend in-housing that if you're dealing with a foundation issue, that you think ahead and make sure that you address the plumbing needs. When you're doing a significant foundation repair, which we call an underpin, so this is going to basically be supporting the entire interior and exterior of the home with new piers, right? Well, the only way to do that properly is we are going to lift the home out of the soil. We're going to do what we call a PVR lift. So that's the potential vertical rise of the soil. We want to avoid even the potential rise of the soil in the future, right? Well, if I'm going to lift your home out of the ground 2, 3, 5 inches, you have to ask yourself, what's going to happen to my sewer pipe? So every time we do an underpin, we actually excavate the entire sewer line, free it up out of the dirt. Once we're ready for our leveling, that sewer line is going to go on steel clevis hangers now. So it's going to be hung from the slab. So it allows it some flexibility in the future movement of the slab. But so every time we do an underpin, we are redoing your sewer system. Now, a lot of homes that need an underpin that still have PVC pipe, maybe they're newer homes, usually the sewer system's still intact, and so we don't have to replace it. Basically, the charge is going to be to excavate around that area. But a lot of times you've already paid for tunnels for piers to be installed in that same area. So we can keep the cost down as best as possible by just adding some materials for the plumbing supplies, for example. So that's the time to ask those questions. Oh, you're exactly right. Anytime you're thinking about a foundation repair or discussing one, you need to be thinking about your plumbing as well.
Yeah. And often the plumbing can be the cause of the repair that's needed. If you had a 1950s house and old sewer pipes are leaking, that could be causing your house to sink in the middle. You got all that moisture right in the middle of the house.
That's exactly right. Sometimes that is the one and only reason you're getting a foundation repair is a faulty sewer system.
Yeah. What about landscaping? We talked about trees, but I know people love to have flower beds right up against their house. I think most landscaping jobs that I see, the flower beds right against the house. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because if it's designed properly, your sprinkler system is maintaining that moisture level, like we talked about, which is great. But what happens when people normally put in a flower bed is it's a big hump, right? It's kind of built up to the plants. And so now you've got this little trough going back against the house, and again, you're holding water. The water's not draining away from the house. And so, how that landscaping is installed near the house can make a big difference, right?
Yeah, no, you nailed it there. So I'm a big fan of landscaping, but it is as simple as making sure that you understand the grade of the property and where the water is going. You nailed it. I like landscaping because I want to divert that rainwater away. I want to have a soft landing for the rain. So I like when rain's coming down and hitting bushes and plants and flowers versus going straight on your grass or your soil, especially in areas that maybe you can't have downspouts and gutters and courtyards or something in the open areas. But that, you nailed it. The mistake that's most commonly made is making it look so pretty and creating that trough in between those pretty bushes and the home in that 12-inch area. And so it's as simple as just making sure that we're graded properly, that we should be level coming out from the foundation to the bushes and then drop off. Mm-hmm. So that, you're exactly right. One of the most common mistakes is too much mulch. Also, when landscaping, checking the soil level before all the pretty stuff goes in. Too many times the soil level is already too low, so I can see too much of your exposed slab, and sometimes they even clean it out to get ready for the bushes and the mulch. So basically, I have erosion that has already occurred. Now I'm going to come in and throw about 1.5 feet of mulch down, right? And then I'm going to plant stuff. And so it looks beautiful, right, to an untrained eye. But if I go over there and just kick my boot and move a little bit of the mulch, I shouldn't see 18 inches of your home slab.
Yeah.
So the first thing people miss out on is actually having dirt first. And a good amount of dirt. Basically, the dirt needs to be, like you mentioned earlier, where it's sloped away from the home and it's taking water away from the home. If it's doing that, now I'm ready for the pretty landscaping. But a lot of times, especially in commercial applications, our apartment friends out there, our retail buildings, our warehouses, they're going to be the biggest culprits, because a lot of times someone's heart's not in it. When it's your own personal property, a lot of times you put more thought into it, right? So apartments and commercial buildings are renowned for having huge erosion problems, and the mulch guys come. And so there's 2 foot of mulch. Well, that mulch is acting as a screen and a filter, actually. It's taking all of the water down directly to the foundation. Where if I had compacted topsoil, compacted and sloped away, and then maybe I have 6 to 8 inches of mulch, then I'm in great shape, because it's really the soil that's doing the job. And the mulch is now slowing down the impact of that rainwater, and it's all working perfectly.
I like to have on the houses that we build, I like to come off the house at 12 inches or so. Grade properly, put down some gravel or some bull rock, and kind of create like a little border all the way around the foundation, and then start your flower beds.
Yep.
And give yourself a little room. And part of the reason we do that too is also so you can see pests, right? If you got bushes right up against the house and you got termites,
That's right,
ant beds or whatever, it's hard to see those. But if you give yourself a nice, 12-inch rock border, it looks nice.
Yeah.
Termites are going up. You can see a termite tunnel, but also gives you the chance to go ahead and get that grading done, and to take that a step further, even kind of take that and transition that into some French drains that are taking water away from the house, kind of between the sections of the flower bed.
Yeah. So, no, I love that approach. I think that is fantastic, because the other thing that we see very common is mulch and flowers and that are above the weep holes, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm using the gravel approach like you have, it's going to be hard for someone to pile up gravel above the weep holes, right? I think anyone would go, that looks a little weird. I don't know if those rocks are supposed to be, right? But mulch somehow is in 90% of homes, it's above the weep holes. So not even thinking about the impact on that as far as moisture and pest goes. A lot of folks don't think about that. So I do love that approach that you've got with the gravel
Yeah.
and the rocks.
What are your thoughts on concrete being poured right up against the foundation separately? So like on smaller lots, you'll see like a driveway going all the way down the side of a house, and they pour that concrete right up against the foundation so that, you know, it stays dry. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But you know, my thought has always been that area where that driveway is at is getting zero moisture on that area, whereas the other three sides of the house are getting, you know, some amount of moisture.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think, you know, I would be okay with concrete creating a barrier around the home if I knew for a fact what the compaction was and how the lot was prepped and what distance away from the home. Because what we're going to see a lot is compaction and the way lots are prepped for building. With some folks are going to do only the exact footprint. Some folks are going to come out 6 inches or 12 inches, and you'd be surprised that corners are cut as soon as you pass that foundation. To be honest with you, there's not a lot of testing when I pass it, even a couple inches. So if I knew that dirt was compacted the right way and you wanted to put a border of concrete around, I'd feel good about it. What the most important is going to be how it's sealed, what product. I would recommend not using redwood for joints and things like that. It needs to be a poly product, and it needs to be managed. Why I'm concerned about the compaction is typically it's not the same as the underneath the main home. So those end up settling at a different rate than the home. So they end up pulling apart, and that's where the way you sealed it matters. As soon as water starts intruding in an area like that, you're in trouble because we can't really maintain it or maintenance it like we need to. Yeah. So, you know, there's a few factors that go into that. I'm not a real big fan of it. If the lot was prepped properly and all the way a foot or two away from it, we could really be confident in our compaction, then I don't see it being a problem, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's usually the joints, the expansion areas that end up being trouble, to be honest.
Yeah.
It trickles down, and then the maintenance is, you know, basically demoing out the concrete if you don't keep an eye on it. If it gets too bad, that concrete's coming out.
Yeah.
Because right below it, most likely is erosion.
And you're right. When people are doing foundation pads, they often do the bare minimum. I mean, usually the engineer's drawings will say, do the foundation pad 12 or 24 inches beyond the footprint.
That's right.
In reality, people are trying to save money, save time,
That's
and they're not bringing those extra loads of dirt in. You know, one thing that helps us a little on new construction foundations, again, if the plans are followed, the plans and the geotech reports will often say to bring in select fill as your you know, it'll say like excavate, you know, X number of inches of the existing topsoil, which is often clay, and then replace that with select fill, compact it. And so the select fill doesn't have the plasticity, it doesn't have the PVR that the clay does, right?
Exactly.
And so if you follow those engineers and those geotech recommendations, your chance for movement is lessened.
Exactly right.
So a properly built new construction foundation and properly drained really should have very little issue. I think houses built, again, I go back to the 1950s because I live in the 1950s house. This is stuff that I see all the time in my part of town over near here. These post-World War II houses were built quickly, pretty inexpensively. You know, these were the production homes. This was the Katy of 1950 right here.
Exactly.
And this stuff was thrown in quick and cheap.
Yeah.
And back then they didn't know about it, or the science hadn't really been developed as much. They didn't do all the geotech stuff that we do now.
That's right.
And so these slabs were just built just right on the dirt, no piers, no select fill, none of that, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of problems in this area, but again, new construction, people who are following the plans, it shouldn't really be as much of an issue, right?
That's correct. No, that's correct. Basically, in this part of town, it's going to be those older trees that it's the same thing. Some of those trees, someone didn't think 20 and 50 years from now, what would that tree look like?
Now you got a 30 or 40 inch round oak tree that's 20 feet from your foundation that's overhanging your roof 10 feet.
No, and we've done a lot of work in this area, and a lot of the homes that are 50 years old, they still don't have gutters, and it goes back to, to square one with the gutters and diverting water.
Yep.
So, and a lot of the homes that are from that era also don't have beams. They're just literally a piece of concrete, flat piece of concrete on the ground. So they don't even have grade beams.
Yeah.
They've got cast iron pipe that's porous and has been leaking. Even the best cast iron pipe has to leak because the material it's made. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Let's talk about maintenance. I know that you have done a lot of, tips and tricks and talks about foundation maintenance in the past. So I kind of wanted to, obviously drainage is the one thing that we've talked about, drainage and gutters. But beyond that, what are your top tips for foundation maintenance?
So basically, I mean, it's tough to get away from gutters and, just basically staying ahead of erosion. And just being aware and walking around the house and asking yourself some common sense stuff. I mean, if you see a possum run underneath your home slab, you might want to ask yourself what's going on. But you'd be surprised.
Where's he going? How do you get down there?
That's right. How long has he lived there?
Why is
he paying rent on the first? Or, But so you'd be surprised. It's common sense stuff. And of course, it's easy. All of us that are in our different industries, especially if you love what you do, you become an expert at it. So I understand things from my point of view are a little different than your average homeowner that may be a chemical engineer at Exxon or maybe a school teacher, a firefighter, a police officer. They've got other things to worry about as well. And that's why it's just great when in doubt to bring the experts in. But the number one thing is so simple. It's basically keeping water diverted from your home. Sometimes the tricky things, because we've talked about gutters, and I'll continue to talk about that because that could save people a fortune if they'll listen to us about gutters, downspouts, drains. But sometimes some of the more off the wall things are basically having a pool built a little too close to the home, or they slope the pool to where the water comes to your house from the pool area. Mm-hmm. So you have gutters, you have downspouts, but somehow you got a pool contractor that didn't think about how he was designing the pool area. And so in heavy rain events, we've got water slamming up against the back of the home. Some of the newer construction it's popular now for what we refer to as like the pier and beam foundations, right? These are newer homes in the Heights and the Meyerland area that are very nice, expensive, custom built homes and $1 million and up, right? They're elevated. And so they're vulnerable to rain events and not having gutters a lot more than you would think. Your foundation that's, your slab on grade, if you've got erosion and you're missing dirt to protect that envelope, then it's coming in. But those pier and beams, it only takes one rainy day and you've already got water underneath the home if the pool is sloped towards your home. Mm-hmm. So, the main thing is common sense stuff. If you see something that doesn't look right, you need to ask some questions. Involve experts as soon as you can and, go from there.
I saw something just this week that said Houston is the fastest sinking city in America.
Yeah.
The whole city is dropping. It's a fraction of an inch a year, right. But we're number one. Yay!
Yeah, that's right.
And so you talked about underpinning houses and lifting houses. One of the issues that I see a lot in this area is that the lots have no grade to them, and the houses are barely above grade. In some cases, like you mentioned, you can't see the weep holes anymore because over time maybe the house has sunk a little bit, and just the soil level has come up over the years from dirt being brought in, and just the accumulation of particles over the years. The house has gone down, the soil level's come up, and now the house is basically sitting flat on the ground.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in some situations, even if you don't really need a foundation repair that much, doing an underpinning and just lifting that house a couple inches can allow you to get that grade away from your foundation and help eliminate maybe some water intrusion into your house.
Yeah, so that is true. So we have had some projects over the years where folks did have water intrusion for various reasons. And so those we have underpin and just lift out of that vulnerable area that they were worried about. Those are more 3 to 4 inch lifts, or I would say under 6 inches. So it is possible. I would just recommend that you research your lot and do as much research as you can to try to avoid that, unless you've got money coming out your ears.
If you can fix it with drainage first,
fix
it with drainage.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if the lot's pretty flat, it's hard to make drains work even. That's right. We've done some drainage project or some drainage on new construction, here in Bel Air where we are. we're in the floodplain. You can't bring any dirt into your lot. In fact, they check that stuff before we start. We do a topo survey.
Yeah.
And we're finished with that new house. That lot better be the same grade it was when you started.
Yeah.
Well, if it's pretty much even with the street, and you want to do area drains, where's that going to go? How do you make water drain from point A to point B when it's pretty much level?
Yeah.
It's just going to sit in the pipes.
That's right.
So you have to look at how are we going to elevate the structure to shed water.
Exactly.
So it's crazy what they want you to do, and then you can't actually do it, or it doesn't make any difference if you do it. So let's talk about foundation repair, and I want to start off by talking about what are the signs that you might need foundation repair. So I think everyone knows you start seeing cracks in the walls. That's one sign. But what are some other signs that you might need to call somebody?
Yeah. So basically, what you're going to want to look for is you're going to want to look for your doors sticking. Maybe they're not opening or closing. Same thing with your windows. If they're difficult to open or close, that could be an indication of some settlement that's occurring. Obviously, we're going to look for cracks in our sheetrock and in our brick and in our tile floors. Mm-hmm. A lot of time in Texas, we're all going to experience some seasonal settlement is what we call it. And so there should be some cosmetics that if we go and really nitpick the inside and the outside of your home, I should be able to find some small cracks just about in anyone's home. Mm. We're hoping that that's just seasonal settlement and that could be just a handyman type of touch-up repair. When you start seeing stair-step cracks that form funky shapes, then that's where we want to be a little bit more concerned, and we'd probably recommend that you get with an engineer or a foundation repair contractor. But the number one red flag, I think, is when folks really have trouble with doors and they are stuck or not closing properly, or the ghost doors that are opening or closing on their own. Yeah. That's when you may have a little bit of an issue.
That's probably what you'll notice the most quickly. Like, you may not walk around looking for cracks all the time, but if your bedroom door's not closing and latching, you'll notice that.
Yeah, and that's usually the first call that we get from homeowners is going to be something with their doors or their windows. Or a large crack, and usually the cracks that they notice most commonly are exterior cracks, just because the sheetrock can hide a lot of stuff if you're not really paying close attention. So yeah, there's a few red flags, and even when you get some of those more serious looking cracks, that does not always mean there's a foundation problem. Yep. Lots of folks, and of course the foundation guys that are sending salespeople to do your free inspection, they like you to think that every crack means you need a foundation repair, right? But that's just not the case. A lot of it, especially if you're staying ahead of things with your property, a lot of things can be, mitigated. We can have an attack plan to figure out where that crack is, how does that correlate with the readings that we took with our leveling device, and then what does it look like outside in this area? What's the landscaping telling us? What's a tree telling us? Did you recently remove a tree? Recently plant one? So there's a lot of different options. Seeing cracks or even doors that are stuck doesn't necessarily mean you need a foundation repair.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like going to the mechanic shop. It's like you don't know what you don't know. Sonora, you ever been to a mechanic shop and they're like, Mrs. Storm, I think you need a new Johnson rod installed, and I think you are going to need some more blinker fluid put in,
and a few more things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And so how do you know that you don't need that blinker fluid put in? Right. Well, hopefully you're smart enough to know what blinker fluid is. But
and it's nothing, for the record. Blinker fluid doesn't exist. But if you sell blinker fluid, somehow it exists in your world, because that's what you sell for a living. So be careful who you invite to inspect your properties, is what I would say.
Yeah. So there is normal movement you may have a small crack that closes up during wet season and opens up during dry season, or vice versa, right? And I've even told people, if you see a small crack one time, you don't necessarily need to call, but you start seeing it, you start seeing more of them, you start seeing them all the time, then call. But take you a pencil and put a pencil mark across both sides of that. If you see your pencil mark start to move a lot, then you should probably call somebody.
That's right. Yeah, that's for sure.
But you can see it come back together sometimes, and it's probably normal.
This is true. No, and I would say, the best foundation repair contractor in the world is going to be one that helps you to not utilize them. That's going to be the best foundation repair contractor. And I know I've mentioned it a few times, but this industry's been taken over by the free estimate. It is not a free estimate. You are getting a salesperson sent to your home. Their job is to sell. They make commission. They most likely have got a family to feed. So keep that in mind. Once you give them some ammunition, like you point out all your cracks, these guys got to make a living, right? I always recommend the first step should be a engineer, and really the right way to do it is with a geo engineer first. You need to know what's going on with your soil. And basically engineers are supposed to work together to solve foundation problems. Now, we're thankful that our organization has seen so much that we feel confident in our knowledge that we could advise, and we're happy to do that. We don't have a sales staff. We don't operate that way, so we're a little different. But I caution my friends, my family, and anyone listening to your program to just, it doesn't hurt. There's some great companies out there that have some great guys that, although they may be sales guys and sales women, they've been doing it so long that they know what they're talking about. So I will say there's a lot of great folks out there, but I'm not sure it's worth taking the risk, though, when it's a free estimate, right? Yeah. And so that's what engineers specialize in. You got, builders and engineers that work together in those areas in your neighborhood that may have a lot of education that can help you avoid just getting talked into something. But you're exactly right. Not every crack or every stuck door means that you need to call someone out to come do a foundation inspection. So
the key is just to monitor that over time. Exactly. Again, first time, you don't need to freak out.
No, not at all.
Just monitor it, observe, see what happens with it,
and we'd be happy to come out and give them a baseline for their readings. If they see a crack, call us. We'll come out there and give them an inspection. And there goes that word free, but it is free. As a matter of fact, we just had a client of ours. We went to look at her home about 6 months ago, and she was having some issues, and turns out the issues were from the pool. There were 3 major leaks in the pool. And so Jake, along with our team, got together. They advised her, get that fixed and let us come back out in 6 months. And so that 6 months has now passed. Just got that email yesterday, and we're going to go back.
Compare the readings.
And compare the readings. Yep. And
that's the right way to do it.
And we've not given them an estimate.
Yeah, the more data, the better. That's the other thing, is if you do have foundation contractors, they should be issuing you a site map with detailed readings. And I would recommend that everyone slow down a little bit. Let's let some data accumulate. Let's give it 3 months, 6 months. If you're really concerned, 3 to 6 months. If you're not overly concerned, let's check it a year later. Yeah. Then we're going to really know what's going on with the home, right? Trusting anyone's readings the first time ever. We don't know, the original pour might have been off a 1/4 of an inch. Yeah. And you got somebody sitting here trying to sell you something because you're off a 1/4 of an inch.
Well, that's the thing is, most slabs are not poured level.
No, not at all.
A big slab can be off a couple inches from left to right.
Exactly.
And so just because the readings are off doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't. No. Right? And that's where that second set of readings is so valuable to anyone that has any concerns about their foundation.
Yeah. I've got, obviously we're talking about y'all today, but I've got another foundation company that I've known for a very long time, and they've been around for, 30 plus years. They have a database of measurements they've taken on so many houses in this part of town.
Yeah. Wow.
And I've called them several times and given them an address. They're like, hold on, let me check.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've got readings from 1998 and 2004 and 2002. Yep. So let's just compare all those readings and see if it's moved any.
There you go. That's the right way to do it.
How valuable is that, having like a history on that house of where that foundation's been at, And so, but you're right. Like having somebody that just keeps those kind of records and that wants to work with you, and because I've called them before and be like, oh yeah, tell Mrs. Jones not to worry about that. Same readings it was 5 years ago. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So, it's a great resource when you have somebody who's going to be honest with you like that. That's the kind of people that we want to work with.
And it's not just the readings. And Jake taught me this early on when getting back some of my site maps from the guys, and I'm like, oh, look, that one's down, and I get all like, this was 3 years ago. I'm like, oh, I probably have one, and I have a good one, and I'll show it to Jake, and Jake's like, okay, well, what are their pain points? What's going on in the house? We need to figure out what's really going on, if there really is a problem, because just readings that seem to be off doesn't necessarily mean there's an issue or there's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. So last question is kind of about repair techniques, I guess. I think most of us here in Houston have seen TV commercials for different foundation companies over the years, and they're like, "Oh, we use the cable lock system, or we use the gator claw system, or whatever it is," you know.
Gator claw.
I don't know.
I know,
I just made that one up.
That's a good one, though.
But,
I like it.
You know what? There's a lot of these different things out there, and I've always kind of said, a lot of those are probably gimmicks. But what's your take on that? Is there a better way? Because I've seen some people that just take cylinders, press them into the ground, and call it a day. Are any of those systems better than another?
Yeah, so there is a system. The system that I would most commonly recommend, if you can afford it, is going to be a steel system, an all steel system that's actually made from old oil pipe that comes from West Texas. And so basically this is going to be a 2 7/8 steel pipe. There's going to be 2 of them for each 12-inch segment. So it's a double walled system that we call it. This is going to get you the best depth, and depth is the king when it comes to foundation repair. Once you've gotten to the point that you've decided you do need a repair, or an engineer's told you that, then the number one thing you should be thinking about is depth. How do we get maximum depth, right? So that's where steel is going to have a surface area of that 2 7/8. That's similar to what you see here with my demo. And so when we're pushing that into the ground, the surface area and the friction is so much less than the most common foundation product is a 6-inch cylinder, a concrete cylinder. Now, I will say we've been using those cylinders for a long time now. We put a lifetime warranty on them. We believe in them, or we wouldn't put a lifetime warranty on them. For what you get for your dollar spent, I'm a big fan of the system because I rather see you get an underpin versus a little partial repair. That's another weakness in the foundation industry with the lifetime warranty that we all have, right? What some people fail to bring up is the lifetime warranty when you bought 6 piers on your home is right where those 6 piers are, on the corner of that bedroom.
It's only,
and that's it.
It's only those piers.
Yeah, and so basically, and we usually warrant about 6 feet away from those piers. So if you think about piers on the corner of your home and then 6 foot into your home, that's it. So, you've got a lifetime warranty on about 80 square foot of your 3,000 square foot home, right? So that's where, when it comes to knowing that, and knowing now that an underpin is always the best way to go, it can get pricey, but anytime you do a partial repair, you're leaving yourself vulnerable. You should not be upset if someone tells you a few years later, okay, you need more piers. Now you need more. Now you need more, because you may be chasing it. Also, once I do a partial repair and I lock a portion of your home in, it's similar to the rule about taking the tree out. You've caused a change now. It's like putting a cast on one arm and how it reacts to the rest of your body. The rest of your body has to operate differently that a cast is here. So when I lock in a corner of your home with piers that it's no longer flexible, it can no longer have any type of flexibility with the soil changes, but the other 95% of your home is still flexible. So you have to ask yourself what's occurring in those 2 different areas where they meet up, right? So with that being said, if I knew that someone really and truly needed 80 piers to really put the problem to bed, they could afford it, it's within their budget with the concrete product, I much rather you do that concrete product. We've seen the success rate of it. We're happy with it. I think some of the companies that have been around for 90 years have been using it. I won't say any names, but there's some companies that have been around for 90 years. They've used that product. So if you can afford it, I would always recommend that you go with steel. That 6-inch surface area, you can imagine pushing that down. The average depth of concrete piers in the Houston area is going to be between 15 and 22 feet. Meyerland and south here, we get into the 20 to 25 foot, even with concrete. Steel's going to get us 30 to 40 foot deep. Okay. You are not at 15 foot, it's going to hold. We're going to get to pressure. We're not going to get to bedrock too. Keep that in mind. Other parts of the U.S., you can actually install pier systems and hit bedrock. And even in our hill country, you can hit bedrock, right? So you can hit granite out in Austin. And you'll know when you do. In the Houston area, we're not pressing these pilings into bedrock. No. We're pressing them into refusal, into a pressure, which is usually between 9 and 10,000 PSIs, right? Those concrete piers hit that at 12 feet. I've even seen them hit it at 6 and 7 feet. in the Katy area. That at 7 feet deep, we're already at 10,000 psi.
Wow.
Where basically, if we keep pressing, we're going to destroy something. So we have to stop. We have to ask yourself, or do a little bit of research. We're not through the active soils. We're not down into the soils that are, you've still got that high PI in the clay. You're still in the clay at 6, 7, 8 feet deep. So that's where that's a risk that even the contractor putting the lifetime warranty on it has. Because we want more depth. If you're a good contractor and you really are, honest, and you want people to see a result from the money they spend with your company, you should want more depth.
You want as deep as you can get it.
Exactly.
So, insurance for you.
That's right. So, but to answer your question, steel is the way to go if you can afford it. And there is a wonderful median there that's called the hybrid pier system. So that's going to have some of the concrete piers, but it's also going to have a steel element. So it's going to start with the steel so that we can penetrate. And that's going to get us more depth. It's also going to interlock. Once we use steel, we have a locking system. Some of the concrete systems, you can do rebar or cable in between them, but that's not real common. What's most common is just stacking them right on top of each other and hoping for the best. What
is the cable? What's the point of the cable? Is that just to keep them from kind of walking off of each other?
Exactly.
Kind of keep them in a straight line?
Exactly. So that cable is really more all about lining them up and keeping them from shifting horizontally, I guess, from movement, sideward movement, moisture that can get down there and start deteriorating concrete even after 20, 30, 40 years just by having it, tightened up together is where the cable is going to help. Yeah,
we've mentioned a geotechnical report a few times. A typical geotech report, so for new construction, when we order one, they're usually doing 2 borings on the site, and those are running, depending on the vendor, $800 to $1,200, something like that. And I think if you just did 1 boring, it'd probably be less because it's less work for the field crew. But that's not a big investment to make to know what kind of soil your property has, and that's not going to change if maybe slightly over the years. If you get that today, and you keep that on file, give it to the new owner if you sell the house.
Exactly.
But that's some information that you have about your house. And if you have a recent construction, your builder should have gotten one of those. You could ask them for it. I know here in Houston, you can file a public information request for the city and request a copy of your plans and everything from the city. The city actually requires those to be on file for a new construction permit in Houston. Most of the cities do. So there's ways to get a hold of your soils report if you want that. I think a public information request in Houston's like $30, and you can get that info and have it for your house.
Yeah.
So, or if you want to get a foundation repair, if you call Lincoln Jacob, instead of paying for a new geotech report, call the city, get a copy of it for $30, and
that's right.
Give it to Jake, and you got it.
That's right. Yep.
So
and we always involve engineers with our jobs too. So that's what is a little bit different with us. So even if we are gracious enough to do a free inspection, our free inspection is a little different than having the salesperson free inspection. So we use engineers on all of our projects. So at some point it's going to be reviewed. Whatever scope we come up with is going to be reviewed by an engineer before it's approved.
That's great.
And we include that in our pricing from the get-go. So we already know we're going to do that when we meet you at your home or your business.
Well, that's different than the way most foundation repair
usually
companies
it's an add-on, and if you want to do it, and then it's really more of a rubber stamping anyway, because it's kind of after the fact. Like, oh yeah, here's your engineer letter. So we're gonna present our findings to engineers ahead of time, and that way they can give us feedback if any changes are needed. So, but we love including engineers. There's no reason not to.
Absolutely.
When it's something as important as your foundation.
Yep. All right, so I think that's about all the questions I had. What are your biggest, Sonora, we'll start with you. What's your biggest takeaway from this conversation? Put you on the spot.
My biggest takeaway is probably that when you move into a home, I can tell you that when I moved in my home, my husband and I bought our home 30 years ago. It's a tract home out in Copperfield. When we bought our home, you think about, I need to maintenance the air conditioner, and I need to maintain this, that, and the other. And you never once had I ever thought, even up until I went to work for Jake, never did I think that our foundation needed any type of maintenance. And we were lucky enough that we bought the house with a irrigation system in the front for the flower beds, and we put one in the back. And so because we like pretty green grass, we have kept those sprinkler systems running for 30 years. When I went to work for Jake, I was like, send one of the guys over. I want to know how my slab is. And believe it or not, my slab looks great.
Oh.
And our slab looks great. So my biggest takeaway from this, maybe it's rather I would love the listeners to have a takeaway, and that would be our viewers, and that would be to your foundation is everything. Make sure that you're taking care of it and you're maintaining it, taking care of it and maintaining it.
Absolutely. What's your number one takeaway that you want people to have?
Just to not be afraid of simple things that you see in homes. Too many people get afraid with a little bit of cracking, or maybe there's a hole around the perimeter in your yard or something. I think people get a little too afraid. Maybe it's because there's been a whole lot of sales involved in the industry, and I think it's just slow down, take a few deep breaths. It's going to be okay. I like the slow approach. I like getting an inspection done by a trustworthy company or an engineer, and then I actually like the idea of comparing it down the road. Unless there's some type of safety situation involved, you need to slow down when it comes to something like foundation repair. And my other main takeaway from today is just realizing how blessed I am to be able to do stuff like this and talk with people like you, and have this amazing lady by my side who is just an unbelievable person for our company and in our personal life. And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Storm. And so I am just thankful for the people that are on my team and to be here with you today.
Awesome. And so I'd say mine is... and we've said this on several episodes in the past. It's come up with some of our other guests. Your home doesn't have a check engine light like your car does. So you have to do the legwork to keep an eye on what's going on in your home. You need to get out, walk around your house every once in a while. We've talked about this so many times, how people don't do maintenance like they used to, whether it's their house, their car. People just aren't as handy as they used to be, right? Well, your best tool in this is just your eyes. Just walk around and see if there's anything that looks wrong.
That's right.
Do you see any cracks in the brick? Do you see any separation around your windows?
Yep.
You see any termite hills going up the side of your house on the pest control side, right? Just use your eyes, and you'll be surprised what you see when you do. Yep. And I'm preaching to the choir because I'm the worst about walking. I've got 3 sides of my house I see all the time. The front, the back, on the side where the trash cans are. I see those 3 sides all the time. Yep. One side of my house, the 5-foot setback where all the bedroom windows are, I walk down there once every 9 months, I bet, So I'm preaching to myself here too, but just get out and walk around your house, and you are the check engine light for your house. It's your responsibility as the homeowner to take care of your investment.
Absolutely.
Guess what I'm doing when I get home?
You're walking around your house.
I sure am.
Good. All right. Well, Jake, Sonora, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. Great,
Curtis,
great to see you. Always great to see you.
You too,
Always.
Curtis. I just want to thank you so much for allowing and inviting Lincoln Jacob Construction to come today and be on the Shepherd podcast. So Shepherd Construction podcast. So thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it.
And I will see you on Thursday. We're gonna whack some. We're gonna swing a stick at some golf balls at Top Golf.
Is Top Golf Thursday?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
You're going, right?
Yes. I wasn't ready for it. I was thinking we were just gonna have our board meeting on our lunch, but nope. We're
having our GHBA Custom Builders Council Top Golf event Thursday. So you can bring your boss too.
Yeah,
if you want.
I'd love to.
I love the nachos there. I'll come for the nachos.
He does. He does.
All right. Well, thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you all for listening to this episode of the Your Project Shepherd podcast. I will see you next time. Take care.